All right, so let's turn up to the Black Business Council to hear their views on what is taking place, and we'll speak to the CEO there, Kganki Matabane. Good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. It's a matter seemingly that is getting not just politicians in Parliament, but even businesses hot under the collar around the approval of the NHI. So, Business Unity South Africa and Business for SA are saying, amongst the things that they are worried about, of course, are procedural lapses, a violation and disregard of Parliament's own public participation model, undermining the principle of democracy, which is constitution-based, where all voices must be heard. But I suppose their big issue is the fact that this bill proposes a sharp curtailment of the role of medical schemes and allowing them to offer cover only for services not provided by the NHI fund. And they're saying this is unconstitutional. Where do you stand as the Black Business Council?
Good evening, Tavo, and the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. What has happened during the public hearings? We made a presentation or a submission to Parliament on this matter, and we fully support NHI. And the reasons why we are supporting NHI, firstly, is that it will open the market for new entrants. I'm sure you are aware that the market is basically dominated by oligarch type of oligopolies. Is dominated by few big players, and there's no space for small players. You look at the entire value chain. You look at the medical aids. You look at the hospitals, and there's no basically role or space for small players. So we believe that the NHI will open that space. Secondly, we remember most of the black business people are coming from an environment where they were denied access to a lot of other things, and health services are one of those. So we believe that the NHI will basically provide universal access to health. And just to basically give you statistics, at the moment, as we're speaking here, there are 15% or 15.8% of the population who basically have access to medical aid as beneficiaries. Will then include the main member and their beneficiaries, which then tells you that only 9.7 million people out of the 61 million people in South Africa have access to medical aid. So the challenge, I think, now is that the people who are against NHI, firstly, they don't want other people to have access, but they want to monopolize the system. So it's mainly a selfish interest.
Yeah.
I think basically that is the issue.
So those are the issues. I mean, of course, if you're not having a piece of the pie, whether there's a curtailment or not, it doesn't really make any difference to you because you're not in the game anyway. But once you are in the game, do you see a proposal such as saying, well, medical aid schemes will cover a particular type of ailments that would not be covered by the NHI? Do you see that as a limitation?
The NHI is not saying, for example, that they are closing medical aids or medical schemes, and that's why we're saying this thing is selfish, because the majority of those people who are actually against NHI, they've traveled to first world countries, they've traveled to Europe, the US, and so on. Some of them have benefited from NHI in those countries. There's a universal access to health services in first world countries where NHI actually works. It may not be perfect like any other thing, but it works. But it does not close all the other providers to the system. It does not close them out. Maybe the people are worried because now they own 99% of the system. So even if you want to take 1% out of the system, they think it's unfair. So we were not expecting those who have to actually support the NHI. But I think there's a bigger challenge that this thing, or bigger problem that this resistance is actually raising. There's a trust deficit in South Africa. A lot of people in South Africa have basically lost trust or lost confidence in government, especially when it comes to providing or running public service.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that is the bigger issue, because people are saying maybe someone is going to eat, is going to eat all the money, and hence there's that resistance. So government has not done itself any favor by not being able to run in other institutions well, running the hospitals, public hospitals in South Africa well, running ESCOM, Transnet, and others.
Yeah.
So there's that lack of confidence in government providing this service properly. Because as I said, these people who are saying no to NHI, they've seen it working in other countries.
Yeah.
It works, and the majority of people have access to health services. But here in South Africa, because of apartheid and other things, we don't have it. But I think I don't know how government is going to resolve this issue of lack of confidence. Yeah. Or lost confidence and trust.
Yeah, I mean, it also doesn't help when you hear the Auditor General, for example, telling you that the compensation fund, the UIF, they have outstanding financials. They're not necessarily giving financials on time, you know. And people are looking at this and are saying, well, you're starting yet another fund that is going to be handled exactly like the UIF. It doesn't necessarily help.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the government's communication is also not that excellent, because there are state audit enterprises that are doing well. There's the DBSA, there's IDC, the Rand Water, and all those type of things. So they're supposed to be encouraging more and more of those SOCs to be like those ones that are doing well. But I don't think they are communicating this well. But I think maybe it's because the people have lost confidence. Even when the government is communicating, there's no trust, there's no belief in what government is saying. They know majority of the time they'll say A, but then B happens. So I think government needs to pull up its socks and make sure that they change the perception. And you can only change the perception not by talking, but you can only change the perception by actually doing the right things. Yeah. And making sure that the Baragwanas of this world, my greatest hospitals and all those hospitals that are there at the moment, they are already there. They are run professionally, and they are run by professionals, not run by people who are there because they are friends to the people who are taking decisions.
Do you think the government is getting cold feet, so to speak, or at least the ANC is getting cold feet, considering that the NCOP was supposed to have debated this and voted on it today, but apparently some note was written to the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, in his capacity as leader of government, and all of a sudden today the debate and the vote was postponed to the 6th of December. The Democratic Alliance believing this is because the ANC is beginning to feel some pressure.
I'm not sure of the facts, but what we've picked up is that government loses a lot of cases, not because of the merits of the case. They're losing a lot of cases because of the process. So if you look at the process of making laws in South Africa, it's prescribed. So you do stage A, stage B, stage C, and until you get to the stage X. So if you jump 1 or 2 stages in between, you are going to be taken to court, and you are going to lose in court, because the court is going to say, show me proof of whether you followed these processes that are prescribed or not. So my suspicion is that maybe they are giving themselves time to go and check all the steps, if they've actually went through all the steps as is supposed to happen in devising any legislation. Because if they don't, if they have not done that, those who are against NHI, they're going to take it to court, and they're going to lose, not because of the merits of the NHI. As I said, NHI works all over the world, but because of the steps. So if they have not followed the steps, they rather go back and correct that, because otherwise this is going to be delayed for the next 5, 10, 20 years.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to come back to. I mean, every time you and I have a conversation, for example, it's around the procurement regulations that are up until this point. It's still a back and forth. They are still not in place. Are we going to likely be in a situation where the NHI is caught up in that cycle?
Yes, remember, I think probably one thing that the lawmakers are missing is the very same process I spoke about, because people who are anti-anything, and this is excluding black people, because black people don't use the courts to fight their battles. But the other people who are anti-anything, they are always looking at where are the loopholes. If they don't want anything to happen, they are looking at the loopholes, and they know if this legislation is not passed this year, and I think in a few days, because Parliament is going to close, if it's not passed this year, chances are next year, between January and June, it won't be passed, because the politicians will be busy with elections and campaigning. So they know, and they've mastered this game of delaying tactics. They know once they get a loophole, they're going to delay it. Next year, they're thinking no one knows what's going to happen. Even if the ANC is back, it will take maybe another 6 months before the new minister, if there's a new minister, is aware of this, and the new parliamentarians. And then, so they are using all these delaying tactics so that this does not happen. And even if it happens, by the time it happens, it's very, very weak. They've already basically covered all the market, or covered the value chain of everything. They've captured everything. The NHI will only have maybe a very, very small space to operate. So they've mastered this. So government has to be very, very, very careful, or Parliament has to be very, very careful in making sure that they don't give the anti-NHI people space to further delay this. And once it goes to court, you don't even know when the court date is going to be. It can be in the next 2 years. And then by the time the court is done, they're going to appeal and all those things. So Parliament needs to be very, 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 very careful and clear that they don't miss any step.
CEO of the Black Business Council, Kganki Matabane, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on this evening.